All right, so we're counting down the episodes of Dragging Up the Past here until we decide to put it back on hiatus and get back to the Grogcast. But we're going back in time again here, back to Dragon number 45. So I am Brant. With us, our co-navigator Jim. Hi, Jim.
Hey, Brant. Good evening to you.
There's Jim. And so we're going back to Dragon 45. You wanna take a guess as to when this is, or did you already look it up?
I did not. Been trying to get my image here working proper. Like I'm going to say, just because I know when Dragon first came out. Are we middle 1980?
I don't know. We'll find out here in a page or two when we get off the cover. I'm thinking we're probably 79 or 80, late 79, early 80. I just know that those early 70 ones, the early 70s were mid 83. So you back up 30-ish issues, and that'd be about where we'd be. So we've got the classic Dragon logo, cover logo on us here, and kind of the iconic Dragon layout, big frame piece of art in the box with a couple of bullet points at the top letting you know a few of the features inside. And that classic $3 price tag, all right, that was big allowance money back in the day. So.
Oh yeah, I mean it's something you gotta tell the kids that money used to be a pretty rare commodity, and $3 was not a small investment.
No, that's like 5 comic books at the time. So.
Oh well, I was
maybe more.
Depending on exactly when this is, depending on exactly where this falls. My comic books in the later, I went to high school from 1980 to 1983, and in that period of time, the comic books I was picking up were 50 cents each.
Yeah, so this was 6 comics. So
6 comics.
Yeah.
If you're gonna mention, I gotta say I don't know who the artist is, but Scarlet Dude on the left has brought some very, very special hair to this particular dance.
He's brought some strong hair game. I'm kind of curious. The dude on the right, like, I get the sort of stuff being strapped on you there, kind of, tying on whatever piece of cloth you've got available. But those really look like the scraps from, like, a Cirque du Soleil disco event. They just seem very bright and spangly.
Is that a thing?
If not, it should be. It totally should be.
Okay, so I just want to know if I can go to a Cirque du Soleil disco event. I'm just curious.
Yeah, well. Who knows? So Raoul Partha's about to add new realism to adventure gaming. The beauty of this is we're talking about galactic grenadiers and a witch's cauldron, but we're worried about how realistic it's going to be. But hey,
So, all right, we've talked about this a lot, that there's a lot of nonsense in those claims, but what is it about it, you can't see the text yet, that's going to give us the promise of adding new realism?
Yeah. What was the old realism?
Is it right? Is it the minis? Is that what we're supposed to understand?
Yeah. Don't really know. But hey, check it out. We've got ice ads on the first real page inside. Whoa. And it's not Rollmaster.
But dude, to borrow your phrase, which fifth grader sketched that frame on the back of his comic, on the back of his biology book?
Yeah, who knows? Now we are initially mentioning the early forebears of the Rollmaster system with arms law here, with each weapon being treated individually on its own parchment table. So, there we go.
Wow, that's kind of cool. That is sporty, is what that is. My goodness.
Yeah. Okay, January 81.
Whoa. All right. Give me a second, because you know what I got to do.
Yes, you do. While you do that, I'm going to note that Roger Moore and Ed Greenwood were contributing editors at the time, and our artist, Dean Morrissey, was there. Jeff Lanners, I've seen some other stuff from over the years. Tracy Lesh has done some other Dragon stuff, I believe, over the years. Goodbye 1980, hello 81, and hello to a couple of new and pretty, I might add, if I won't get accused of sexism, faces here at Dragon Publishing. Okay, so January of 81, what are we... Did you find them?
Number one song in America.
In January of 81. Betty Davis Eyes. That was later in the year.
John Lennon, Just Like Starting Over.
Really?
Off Double Fantasy.
Huh. Yeah, I think most real music fans have tried to brain dump anything associated with Yoko Ono.
And, of course, we always ask the other question, what was the number one movie released in January of 1981? Not, of course, the number one movie of the year, because, and I'll tell you what that is, because it's a pretty obvious one. I would have actually guessed that. But what was the number one movie released in January of 1981?
I don't know. It's going to be something totally off the wall, like, you know, Tootsie or something. I don't know. What was January of 81 for movie?
You know, I'm going to give you half a point on that one. It was actually 9-5.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and Dolly Parton.
And Dabney Coleman.
1981. Do you know what the number one movie of that year was?
The number one
it's actually fairly easy.
Movie of 81?
Yep, not even close.
Was that the year Empire came out in 80? I don't know. What was it?
83.
No, Jedi was 83.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders, okay.
Yeah, Jedi is 83. Raiders of the Lost Ark, but along with things like Chariots of Fire, Time Bandits, and the James Bond movie was For Your Eyes Only. So
yep.
A whole lot of stuff going on there.
And honestly, For Your Eyes Only may be my all-time favorite James Bond flick.
Great theme song. Still like it.
Yes. Great movie. Still like it. So, all right, so what have we got going on in this issue of Dragon? We've got a special attraction on the Dragon Dungeon Design Kit.
Very good.
The other features, we've got a variety of stuff that actually happens inside the dungeon. And so there's just really kind of a whole lot of different adventurous sorts of things going on here, but no real overarching theme to it all. Not really one that I can see. This is just sort of lots and lots of bits and pieces. So this is not, you know, pulling the main course out of the fridge and getting ready to cook it. This is going over to the spice cabinet, right? This is all the things to season your game with.
I'm going to tell you right off the bat, there's an article here that prompted a whole lot of debate in my dungeon group, so this is going to be great.
Okay. And we're going to have a little fun when we get down towards the end of this issue, too, because I'm going to let you have your pearl clutching moment here in a few.
Thanks for that.
Imagine that we got an entire magazine on fantasy modeling.
Well, boy, you know, this, how do you say it? You got to say, once upon a time.
And for somebody who has no idea what wargamers really are, war games, the greatest fantasy of them all. Now, I get the whole kit bashing spaceships, right? I mean, it's well known that the ILM guys used a whole lot of leftover World War II, model kits to bolt all the gears and accessories and external pieces onto all the spaceships in the Star Wars movies. But kit bashing spaceships, kit bashing anything was always kind of fun. But yeah, war games as the greatest fantasy of them all.
But once upon a time, we sat around and waited for our fantasy modeling magazine just for the purpose of being able to, put together, get some tips and pointers on the bestest figs to paint. Oh, my goodness, the internet is so much better.
And clearly, although we are no longer in the 70s, the 70s mustache has not yet had the sun set on it.
I am sitting right here, okay? This is...
I really wasn't going there.
This is... But the... you can have a... Wow. And again, we've talked about them before. one of the lost treasures of this era of gaming, epics.
Yep.
Datestones of Ren, Morlock's Tower, which I certainly did play. I never played Rescue at Riga, but or Rigel, but I certainly did play Morlock's Tower. Who thought this ad was a good idea? Who thought it was a good idea to have smiling mustache man staring at the camera with the computer in the background and say, oh my goodness, advertising was awful.
Well, I will say this. There's a very interesting sort of effort afoot at the University of Maryland, and I know about it because I happen to know one of the guys that does it, and there was an article about him in an Atlantic magazine some years ago, probably 8 or 9 years ago at this point. But one of the co-editors of the Zones of Control book, Matthew Kirschenbaum, has been undertaking for several years now an effort to preserve a variety of early computer games.
Yes.
One of them was Sea Monster. Some of the Epix games. There's a variety of these out there, and his whole thing is, look, these are legitimate art forms of their day and age. And the challenge is, if we don't preserve things like Morlock's Tower and Datestones of Ren, then at some point we're going to lose these pieces of art. We end up with the obsolescence of the technical tools that we need to access these early works of digital art. And that's an effort that Matt's undertaken over the years to preserve not only the software, but sufficient hardware on which to run it. And that's a challenge.
Yes.
Now, Matt's the name on the front of the whole thing. I'm sure there are other people involved in this effort. I just don't know who they are to help give them credit. So I'm going to give it all to Matt, and Matt will yell at me about it later. So, all right, let's move on here. Gas them up and smoke them out. The article of fantasy flatulence.
This is the thing I was going to talk about.
Oh boy!
You got to go to page.
Well, let's just the basic introduction here. Situations involving poison gas, heavy smoke, and various magical clouds. And so, as you're refereeing the gas attacks, the World War I trench warfare of the fantasy world. What are we dealing with? We've got some smoke. We've got some poison gas, and we've got some magical clouds, and we've got, we got to clear things out. We got to sort of run for cover. All right, where am I headed here? Gas masks?
Go back.
Are we heading to the algebra formula here?
Third column. What? What is that?
You talking about the math? For those who care, the function is?
What? Did you do calculus?
It's been a long time. Let's put it this way: my son is a high school freshman, although he is pretty advanced in math for being a high school freshman, and he's at the point now where I can no longer help him with his math homework. So,
roger that. And folks, I have friends. Now, I took BC Calc, so I was there, but I have friends that argued about this formula. we were sitting around going, I don't, and I said, now imagine, although it's a function of the calculus, it's also a chemistry problem. Now, I loved the calculus. Chemistry and I have never been friends. I admire it at a distance, but we have never entered into a relationship. The idea, to return to a frequent theme of dragging up the past, that anything is improved in your game by running this formula, that's delusional. Please, I admire it. It's an interesting thought experiment, but holy cow.
Well, but I think part of what you could do with this is not try and use this on the fly, but as a DM prepping for an encounter somewhere, right? You could figure out, okay, I've got a 40 by 40 room and I've got a magical, I've got a gas spore disguised as a beholder floating around in there. As soon as some idiot hits it with a sword, how fast does the room fill up and how fast does the room clear once it's time to clear it? I could figure that out ahead of time, and perhaps that's where I put this formula into use, to figure that out ahead of time so that when it does come time to run the game, okay, within 3 rounds the room is now filled with poison gas. Okay, once it starts to dissipate, I've now got 12 rounds before it's fully cleared. right?
All right.
There's no way in hell I
would
would
you
use this on the fly.
Would you number the times you have Game Master, Dungeon Master at above or below 1,000 times?
Below, but probably not that far below.
All right.
I was far more a player than
many,
a GM.
How long would you tolerate a player who said, in your response to, all right, guys, if you don't get out of this room in 20 turns, you're dead because of the concentration of gas? How long would you tolerate the player that said, excuse me, Mr. Brandt, I've run the formula here on my TI-38 intelligent calculator, and it tells me that that's not correct. I would have at least 30 rounds.
Yeah.
Who's that guy? Other than not playing with me tomorrow.
He's one of the guys who's listed in the Gamer Guide trying to find a game group somewhere internationally because he's been kicked out of every one in the country.
I do appreciate that they go down through a lot of these gases, most of which were not known to the Middle Ages, the rough period from which we derived Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes. Well, and here's something that I will say in defense of the role players while simultaneously slagging our groggier brethren. This is a case where our role-playing games are showing our wargaming roots. Right? Because the wargamers have never met a single item on the planet that they couldn't try and apply a mathematical formula to. Right? Yes. I mean, part of the voodoo of Squad Leader was that we somehow managed to try and quantify morale. You know, the ultimate in intangibles. We're going to slap a number on it somehow and sort of, make dice do stuff to it. And so the idea that people are going to start slapping numbers on everything they can and start trying to apply a mathematical formula to every facet of the game still hadn't quite seemed weird to people yet because there was no real alternative comparison. This was the norm, wasn't it?
I should think.
And we're talking about mathematical formulas for poison gases in large part because we'd just run out of other things to slap, mathematical formulas on. So, I do want to, let's take a look over at our table here. Not our alternating bars of gray, not even necessarily greatly justified. However, whoever was working on this one's at least readable. It ain't pretty, but it's not that traveler spaceship diagram that we keep referring back to from episodes past. Look, there's clearly some kerning problems here. There's a few other issues. That said, this reads like it was written by a chemical officer. This is some second lieutenant who's deployed somewhere and bored, and he's like, I'm going to take some of my professional expertise, and I'm gonna apply that to this game that I love. And so I would be real curious to know if who are we over here? Robert Plamondon, however you would pronounce that, if he had ever served in the Chemical Corps in the United States military. So,
and my only question for Robert is, who says that those gases are beyond the capacity of an alchemist to create?
Yeah.
Fine, it's really hard. It's incredibly hard. It'll require many weeks of effort, but it can still happen. Anyway.
It's a fantasy game, right? I mean, this could be ogre flatulence.
Well, there it is. And it's interesting because the very next article is going to get to something that I actually have thought about, also given to us by one Robert Plamondon.
Dungeon ventilation.
I have a very, very good couple of friends, one of whom is responsible for his own series of littler games, and I appear on his podcast from time to time, and he's a professional architect. And we have had lengthy, nerdy discussions about the substantial design flaws that exist in most dungeons.
Yeah.
I don't know as ventilation is the least of their worries, but it certainly is an interesting question to ask, especially since once you get underground, the passage of air actually does become remarkably difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. What I'm curious about in all of this, in the design of dungeons and lairs and such underground, I've always been curious where the Wandering Monster waiting room is. Right? Where do these guys go when they're not simply wandering around? Like, is there a line of them taking numbers? Okay, it's your turn, right? You know, like the commuter on ramps with the stoplights at rush hour. You know, okay, it's green. You go, mummies out the door. Get out of here. You know,
we've not solved this problem. I'm getting back into Skyrim because it was, I think, $4 on the Steam sale, and they still drop in wandering monsters.
Yeah.
There's no organic place from which they come. There's no, well, that over there was where they were living and you wandered in. No, they just appear. Yeah. Something to do. I think it's Raymond Chandler who said, hey, if a scene's getting boring, I just have somebody walk in with a gun.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the same thing with Dungeons & Dragons. If my adventure's getting a little bit boring, you're attacked by 7 kobolds.
Well, so, and why not?
Yeah. But I enjoyed this article. I remember reading it. It is an interesting thing to think about. How would you... And to me, it was actually one of the articles that made me realize that dungeons, as delightful as they are, and I will always dungeon crawl. Don't get me wrong. This is one of the great things you can do. My son has already done it a dozen times. I love doing it. I will always lead it or follow it. But dungeon crawling doesn't make a whole lot of bloody sense.
You mean the way the elves and dragons and flaming arrows and sleep spells and, you know, poison gases non-creatable by alchemists do?
Yeah, right. That all makes sense.
Yeah.
Doesn't it to you?
In that weird, perverse way, yes. So.
Yeah.
All right. Enhance your fantasies with Dragon Tooth. Personality sets contain fantasy role-playing characters with more action, more drama, more sculptural quality, and, of course, more character than any other figures available. Because some assembly is required.
Okay. First of all, I hadn't seen... This is obviously happening new to both of us, right?
Yes.
We're not too familiar with this. I'm going to find P12. I'm finding it.
Okay. What was P12? Rictus the zombie.
Rictus.
Well, okay then.
Whoever you folks are at Dragon Tooth, my hat is off. That is brilliant and wonderful. I'm definitely... Subutai the Mongol is a little too on the nose. Very disappointed in that. But no, Rictus. The fact that I've never named a zombie king or a lich Rictus, I'm not disappointed in myself. that needed to happen. But yeah, like I say, well done, Dragon Tooth. Well done.
Yeah. Interestingly, you know, if you were sitting down with somebody and saying, "Hey, I want to talk to you about our latest ad campaign. We're going to lead off with enhance your fantasies with..." Whoa, stop. Right? Let's go into that pitch meeting and let's do the slow reveal of that ad. Enhance your fantasies with... Hold on there, brother.
Steady on, soldier.
The NPCs for hire. So again, as we've noted in the past, Dragon calls these things NPCs. Let's face it, this is a stealth way to introduce a new character class. Right? That's really what we're after here. We have Roger Moore, not of James Bond fame.
I need a substantial digression.
Oh, boy.
Robert Plamondon?
Yes.
Seeking to verify your theory that he was once a chemical officer in the U.S. military.
Yeah.
He now runs a free-range chicken farm in Oregon.
Okay. You sure we got the same Robert Plamondon?
I sure do, because I verified. He still writes for D&D.
Okay, outstanding.
Robert is looking to be in his later 60s. He raises free-range chickens and operates a specialized imprint of books known as what do you call it? I just saw it. He has opened up his own book line dedicated to various agricultural topics, although he did publish a book through Dungeons Deep. But the first book that comes up is Success with Baby Chicks.
Well, okay then.
So Robert is still out there. God bless you. So there it is.
Well, let's throw this out there. Should any of the 7 people that regularly watch this happen to know Robert or know how to contact Robert, point him in this direction and give him a high five for us.
Because God knows we're high fiving him here.
Yeah. Hey, look, we have the benefit of 30-odd years of hindsight looking back on these early ideas in gaming going, what the hell were we thinking? What we were thinking was we've got a brand new thing for which the map is not yet filled in. Right? And
you get guys like Robert Plamondon who made their own way. I actually kind of admire it.
Yeah. We make fun of it a little bit these days because, that's sort of what we do anyway. And anybody that doubts that needs to come hang out with us at Origins and watch us just spend 4 days making fun of ourselves the entire time.
Absolutely.
But, this was a labor of love for guys who clearly wanted to contribute to the cause. And that's a great thing. And these days, unfortunately, too much of that is buried away and, hidden away all over 10,000 different message boards and blogs and various fan websites because push-button publishing has reduced the barrier to entry so much that it's easier for anybody to just throw up a good idea online somewhere, that it's a lot harder to have that unifying thread the way we did with Dragon way back when. But, that said, these are the artifacts that are left behind from early fandom. So,
and when you got a guy that's gone off and look, it's unhealthy to have D&D be your only thing.
Yeah.
And so the fact that these people drew inspiration and excitement, and then became chicken farmers. That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, hey. All right, so our NPCs, we have one who predicts and one who seeks the perfect mix. We still can't match our fonts. We're still going sans serif on one side and serif on the other.
Holy.
Maybe that was intentional. But given that at the top of every page we have top left dragon serif, opposite dragon sans serif on the other side, right? And that's kerned a little too closely together, which makes me think we just missed a font load somewhere. I'm guessing this was not intentional, or sort of.
I'm gonna have to steady you in your chair as you scroll down a little bit more. But anyway.
Oh boy. All right. Yeah. So the NPC. So we've got the astrologer down here. We've got some characteristics. Interestingly, here's an alternate way to roll their stats.
Yes.
Now, part of this, I think, is let's just goof off with all the funny-looking dice we've got. Right?
But here's the interesting thing. As a historian, first and foremost, these are 2 really important types, that I think just got missed in early D&D. I think the astrologer and the alchemist are so deep into the lore of the West, and the fact that I don't know that this is the first time we ever got around to them, but I think it is.
I think you're probably right.
And especially alchemy, that's not a joke. That's a huge part of the lore of the European West that becomes Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, one of the things that I wonder in all of this is how much of these things were just completely missed versus how much of these things were not, while they were very important to the wider fantasy setting in which much of the gaming takes place, we had still barely evolved beyond the dungeon crawl at this point, and astrologers aren't real useful underground. Alchemists perhaps slightly more so, but unless you're toting the wagon behind you with the chemistry set, there's only so much use they're going to have in the actual adventure itself. So unless you're running a long-standing urban suburban type scenario, or you're clearly out from sort of out from under the dungeon, you've come out from under the mountain, neither of these guys are particularly useful at that point. And so I wonder if that's part of the reason it took forever to get around to this.
Yeah, I don't know, because you're right. Within a structure of a pure dungeon crawl, neither of these characters is particularly useful.
Yeah, I dare say the astrologist may be the most useless underground adventurer ever, huh?
Right. It's like, all right, we are confronted by 13 kobolds. We're feasting on the corpse of a dead elf. Astrologer, what do you do?
Yeah. I stare at the roof and hope for the best.
I remove my pen and quill. I remove my quill from my pocket, take out a parchment, and scry the future.
Yeah. He's not really useful at that point. All right. Let's get down a page here. Somewhere in here, you were expecting me to freak out.
Right, kind of in the middle right of page 13.
Oh, where they decided to paste up the ad over top of the text?
I'm just kind of curious where Lyle's Hobby and Craft Center came from.
Yeah.
Just, well, you had an ad, the Tribes of Crane.
Yeah.
But you apparently also had $5 from Lyle's Hobby and Craft Center.
I'm wondering if it wasn't one of those, okay, if we space this out, it's going to be way too obvious that we overspaced it to fill this extra inch we've got over here. So let's see what we can cram in there. Maybe the paste up guy has, his buddies, drinking buddies with Lyle. And so that's how we got, an extra ad crammed in there. But you're right. Yeah, that paste up does look a little awkward. Let's go take a look at the tribes of... Huh?
And the Tribes of Crane doesn't manage to hold its fonts together.
Oh, of course not. Who did at the time?
Understood.
So, you task chief of the leopard people, wandering tribe of Crane. Sit in your great wagon, awaiting news from your swift-searching outriders. Suddenly, hoofbeats approach. The outriders leap from their mounts to your wagon, flushed with excitement, for they know full well the meaning of their news. But one sector to the north, the great merchant caravan of the Impala people has been spotted.
So now we're just naming Chevy cars.
Yeah, clearly. To arms, you snap your orders. I mean, is that really what they said back at the time? To arms, to arms.
I have pretty much daily, but go on.
Yeah. Fill your hands, you son of a bitch. Right?
Let all know the tactic will be enfilade right. Really? Now, my arms, my mount. You learned that Kate?
You heard that Kate, chief of the Impala people, has chosen a stand and defend tactic twice before. Will he again? Okay.
Wouldn't expect that. Sort of a twist.
Yes. You know that the Impala people are fine warriors, as are all the people of the many tribes. So if we're all fine, really nobody's fine. This will be no raid of the strong on the weak, but rather a mighty clash of the tribes of Crane. So clearly your S2's doing his job, right? We've got some doctrinal analysis. We need a we need a terrain overlay that we can throw the doctrinal template onto to try and anticipate where that stand and defend tactic will be used. So
it's a PBEM. I missed that.
It's a unique correspondence game, allowing for interaction between players in the fantasy world of Crane and each other through a continuous game that may be entered at any time.
It's so great.
Yeah. Cattle, goats, and caribou are the mainstay of the tribes, depending on the geography. But horses and the great man-carrying warhawks are important to the fierce warriors. This is... We really need to go on like a total PBEM scavenger hunt and round up every possible bit of PBEM we can find out there just to get all the world books collected.
Tribes of Crane is still running.
Really?
Uh-huh. We should play.
Here's the sad part. They've got more fans than we do.
I'm going to say no.
I'm going to hope no, but my trademark pessimism says, yeah, they probably got more participants than we have. All right. Magic items for every man.
I think you desperately need to put on our logo, taking second, still taking second to Tribes of Crane.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. There appears a set of tables for outfitting an encountered party with magic items. The general idea behind them is that higher level characters will have more magical items than lower level characters. We needed a chart to tell us this. And that they will have more powerful items than lower level characters will. Okay. One must kill big monsters to get big treasures. Or steal them from someone else.
Right.
Yeah. Seriously. Why kill people when you just steal stuff and run away and not take the chance on getting hit for it? So... all right, so we've got a chart because we can't help ourselves. We have to have charts. Continuation of the DM's guide table on pages 175 and 176. So here we go. It's not enough that we have a table. It's a continuation of an existing table. And here we go.
And I'll just throw out there that it's my standard problem with all this. None of these things are particularly special.
Yeah.
Shield +1, chainmail +1, a rope of climbing. Look it up, folks. It's not exciting. Bag of holding, sure, but that's more its reputation than its reality. Boots of elven kind, had them, used them. But honestly, did you need a table?
Yeah.
You just couldn't say. You find a sword +1. There you go.
Well, and one of the interesting things that I always thought about with this, and one of the things that I threw out in some of the early design discussion sessions when we were working on the World of Asane 20 years ago now. Good God, I'm getting old. But one of the things I was talking about is, we use the parlance in the in the gaming world of the sword +1, the shield +1, the spear +1 as kind of the magic sword. But I've seen enough of the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon type of movies to know, the Green Destiny sword. It's not a magical sword. It's just a really super well-made sword. And couldn't it just be your sword +1 at that point? Right? It's not magic. It's just good. And so isn't that better than your average sword? And so now here comes your sword +1. And so go whack somebody with it because it's a better sword than the other one. It's lighter. It's more well-balanced. It's fill in the blank, better made in a certain way. So less likely to break when you hit somebody with it. Whatever that may be. Can't that be our sword +1? Does it have to be magic or can it just be cool?
Right.
So, all right. Hey, look, more charts. But I will say that this one right here with the shield and the battle axes, that's at least a 10th grader right there. Right. Yeah. I kid. That's actually a pretty cool looking piece of artwork. That's one that I would sit there and try to copy in my 5th grade social studies notebook. I would be trying to doodle that one to emulate that one. That one looks kind of cool. I like that one.
All right.
Keep on moving here. All right, so I get the desire to have some sort of spifftastic little narrative intro, given the potential audience here being full of storytellers, and so this sounds kind of cool. But damn it, don't give me block text in an old English script, right? I mean, this crap's just hard to read. And who the hell wants to read, Old English calligraphy, or has aerial reconnaissance failed to locate the 8th Panzer Division? Right? The 7th Space Fleet of West Oxfordshire. Right?
We have talked about this.
I know.
Talked about this. The minute that Old English font happened, it was over.
Yes. Yes, it must be used in all places at all times. So.
For we love it. We love it above all other fonts.
I am just going to pull this up here real quick and kind of zoom in. Look, we've got Lyle's Hobby and Craft Center again. They're in Dragon twice. You go, Lyle. That is awesome. We love you, Lyle.
Now I gotta check. You keep going. I'm gonna check. I'm gonna
see if it's still there.
Going concern.
See if we still have Lyle. I just wanted to zoom in and see what some of the names of some of the games, the game stores were at the time. I do like that in Indiana you could go hit the Valparaiso Pet and Hobby Shop. So you could buy a whole stash of Raoul Partha figures and then go get a live iguana to sub in for the dragon that's going to take them out on the table.
What are you even talking about? Explain Maine to me.
The Leathercraft down in Caribou, Maine at the downtown mall. The downtown Wynn Mall.
How do I even... I'll stipulate to your point about the animals, but how do I even know that I should look for a game at HC Leathercraft?
Well, maybe he's got early cosplay accessories there as well.
Sweet baby James.
All righty. Have you found Lyle? Is Lyle still going?
Lyle is not a going concern based on what the internet tells me.
No, the internet never lies. All right. This one I get a kick out of. All right, this be a creative game player. Here's what I get a kick out of with this. Kristen Wheaton. And I'm not going to ask for independent internet confirmation of this guy's existence because I'm pretty sure there's only one dude that spells Kristen the way he does. You know what he's doing now?
I don't.
He is a faculty member in a graduate program in intelligence. As in like military, national, strategic intelligence. He is a faculty member teaching intel at the graduate level at a college whose name I totally forget. You could look him up on LinkedIn. I know the guy. I've worked with the guy on a couple of things. It's a kick to me to see, because when he was writing this, I'm curious if he was still a teenager when he got published in Dragon, because he's not that old. He's not that much older than me, and this could very well have been 15, 16, 17-year-old Kristen Wheaton writing about how to be a more creative game player. And quite frankly, some of the arguments that he makes in this article are fairly good, because he's talking about and so this is where his intel roots start to show through. With all monsters, the first thing to consider once battle is inevitable is, how do I attack it? Right? Is it prone to spells, have low intelligence, high intelligence? What are its weaknesses? What are its strengths? This is intel work, right? This is your S2 at work.
There you go.
So basically, unless one can go in for a quick kill, then attack on the monster's strongest weapon is in order. Right? By all means, do not necessarily attack the monster's strongest attribute. Disarmament, however, usually leads to quick capitulation. Render useless a giant's arm so he cannot heave boulders at you. Smart move. Right? Hey, look, terrain can be an all-important factor in determining the outcome of the battle. This sounds a whole lot like one of our briefings from a command post exercise at the Groghead Central Command. So, but let's face it, this is a fairly solid set of guidelines and parameters as, the battle is being joined. One of the nice touches in here that I think is very important, that I'm not sure enough gamers give credence to, is always consider the third dimension and possibly the fourth as possible routes of escape or means to gain an advantage. So,
well, the reality is, as we moved, you're absolutely right. It is one of those cases where we moved from dungeon crawls to really, and a lot of these other articles speak to that.
Yes.
Poison gas, ventilation. We suddenly started thinking about, wait a minute, what are we doing? How should this work? And this article is of a piece with that. And while we've made fun of and criticized some of this in the past, the idea of making your opponent real, understanding its ecology rather than just dropping magically from the sky and attacking you, and really trying to make it seem more realistic, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I do like this case study in creative attack. Consider dragons. For example, it is possible to generate a small boiler explosion in the stomach of a red dragon by forcing cold water down its throat. Statement of fact. Clearly, a statement of fact. Obviously, this happens with every red dragon. Not, hey, why don't you see if you could do this? No, it is clearly and obviously and utterly self-evident that this is what happens. If we say, for example, that a blue dragon discharges a bolt of electricity, then we could assume that it must build up this highly positive charge in its mouth and release when its mouth is open. If this is the case, then a large piece of metal within its mouth would serve to short-circuit the process. How'd you beat the blue dragon? We electrocuted it. So, I think that would be a fun use of a teleport spell. I'm going to teleport an I-beam into the mouth of the blue dragon. Why I wouldn't teleport the I-beam into the brain of the blue dragon and just have it drop dead, who knows? But, so no, this is, I enjoyed this brief article. I remembered seeing this article, and, it was years later that when I met Kristen Wheaton and started, we had done some professional collaborations in our day jobs some years ago, and Chris, an interesting dude. I want to say we had an early interview with him at Grogheads in our first year of existence a long time ago. You can go back and look. You're sitting in front of that there internet thingy. But yeah, we had Chris Wheaton in the system quite a while ago. So this was a real treat to stumble across. Louis Pulsifer's been all over Dragon Magazine over the years, so it's not like these sort of snuck up on anybody. But ways to handle high-level headaches. Of course, it is possible to invent grossly powerful new monsters. Right? So,
actually, as brief as this article is, this is probably, we've talked about this in one of the other Dragon episodes. This actually gives some of the best suggestions I've seen on the topic.
For high-level headaches?
You've got to change your game.
Yeah.
If you're not going to retire the character, they're going to get involved in things, and the idea that they're going to wade through hordes of orcs and have that remain entertaining is nonsense.
Yeah. One of the best solutions that I had ever seen to the uber powerful character problem was to it dramatically changes the game to the point where many of the players may not want to play the characters anymore. But the rumor whispering campaign starts to take off that the heroes are fill in the blank whatever bad attribute you want, right? They have body odor or whatever the hell the rumor is going to be that makes them totally undesirable to anybody in the current realm. And so how do you defeat a whispered rumor campaign? How do you beat that? Good luck with that. So but yeah, there's road away from adventuring is politics, because that's going to unify people around the table.
Right.
So there's a bit of fun. The Bazaar of the Bazaar. Right? The Box of Many Holdings, the Ruby Slippers, the Ring of Oak, the Bell of Pavlov.
Obviously, people are having a good time.
Yes, the Pet Rocks. Love them. Dexterity bonuses and strength bonuses to hit will not count.
That was the thing, people. That was the thing.
That is awesome. All right. The right way to get published. Our good buddy Robert.
He's there. Well, he's certainly something of an expert on the gig. He opened up his own publishing gig once upon a
Yes.
eventually. So
so we're gonna have to one of these days go back and look at subsequent issues. Go back and look at 46, 47, 48, because I am overwhelmingly curious what the Gary Gygax response to this would be.
please, however, for the benefit, I wish as a clerk to read into the record, note number 9.
Number 9, number 9, number 9. Huh. That's kind of entertaining.
That was a thing.
Yes. Yes. Well, the I do think that the format and structure of this article is kind of cool. You've got Robert's advice going on there, and then Kim, the editor, right next to it, giving you follow-up advice. Hey, here's some more information about this. So I do think that's a good way to demonstrate to the readers, hey, here's some interesting pieces to consider.
I just started reading some of the comments. Everyone who writes, and I'll say this, and I'm someone who's guilty of this, read note 1, believe it, and obey it.
Okay, then.
It is astonishing how many times you don't need the first paragraph you write.
As a man who has graded many, many, many undergraduate papers and has taught remedial writing classes to college students, essentially 4th grade English to college students, I'm wholly in favor of that. Because anything that reduces the amount of blather that I have to wade through, I'm totally in favor of.
It's actually well worth reading. It's interesting. I'm curious to see. Seems to me, as I'm glancing through it, that quite a few of these principles still apply.
I have no doubt. So yeah, this is one that I think definitely lots of people should look up and should pay some attention to.
Nice job, guys. Actually, really well done.
Yeah. All right, let's keep on going. Some top secret reactions and rule additions here. So, security clearance level 1 in all bureaus. Begin message. This is cool. It's not simply some additional rules, edits, and clarifications, but they put it in a nice thematic wrapper.
Right.
And that's kind of a neat way to do things. A lot of people don't care enough to do it that way anymore, and so that's kind of fun. When I wrote my review / thoughts on the game Seasons, the board game. Don't know if you've played that one. It's wizards doing their thing as the seasons sort of progress, but each season different types of mana have sway over the world. The way I wrote the review was as a discussion between two guys trying to design a game, and that game ultimately becomes Seasons. And essentially it's, hey, people like deck building games, so we're going to throw in a deck building aspect, but people also like dice throwing games, so we're going to throw some dice chucking into there. But we're going to have funny symbols on them, so they can't just use any dice, they got to buy our dice. And so sort of made it this whole conversation thing. I got a lot of flack for that, but why didn't you just write a review? Well, because I thought this would be more entertaining. I like this that Merle threw at the front of this thing. This is entertaining. Right? Give me something with a little character and a little flair to it. I like this.
And please read point 8.
Point 8. Above or down here? Okay, so down here. 272 survey responses returned by players found the majority of persons playing Top Secret are single teenage males who earn less than $5,000 a year and own more than 20 games.
Adjusting for inflation.
of inflation of the money or inflation of the ages?
I choose. So now let's see here, $5,000
Oh boy.
in 1981.
While you do that, I'm going to zoom in on this Medals of Honor ad because this looks kind of cool. Right? High quality buttons are now available. This is kind of neat. Patience my ass. I'm going to go kill something. That's fun. Dwarf power.
That was a thing.
Those are fun.
So
Pogs
apparently,
before Pogs.
I'm told by the internet that equals an income of some $14,000 this year.
So single teenage males making less than $14K and owning more than 20 games. Sounds like every gamer I know.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Those are all the ones I grew up with.
That's so great. That may be my favoriteest thing in a dragon ever. That's certainly going on the list.
Yeah. Do you remember Dragon Tales magazine?
Yes.
You think anybody besides you and me remembers Dragon Tales magazine?
No.
For those not in the know, it was the fiction anthology accompanying Dragon.
Amen.
So it was. Leomund's Tiny Hut. So Missile Fire and the Archer subclass. So again, we're now sneaking in another type of character class. So fighters, all humanoids, and to some degree, thieves are underrated when it comes to their ability to project missiles. All right.
Oh, dear God.
We have a segment of action update.
That's good to know.
We don't just have turns and rounds. We're now into segments.
Yeah, because that did everybody a whole lot of good.
So here's a question for you. Even so, in January of '81, VCRs weren't in like every corner of everybody's house anywhere.
No.
So how many folks at the time do you think were familiar with the Errol Flynn Robin Hood movie?
Yeah, it was pretty hard to come by, I would guess. Well, above or below a certain age, you mean?
No, just not only that, but how many folks might have ever actually seen it?
I think,
given that you either saw it in the theater or it didn't appear.
There is a brief clip from it that plays in a Warner Brothers cartoon. I dare say more people had seen it there than anywhere else.
Yeah. Now, I've seen the Errol Flynn Robin Hood movie. Believe it, it was on Turner Classic Movies about 2 weeks ago. Because it was on when my son had a friend over for a sleepover in there over the holidays. The Errol Flynn Robin Hood and the Errol Flynn Three Musketeers are both fantastically fun movies for folks that enjoy adventure stories. They are very bright. They are very entertaining. But yeah, they are fun. So I'm just curious, though. I mean, how many folks might have seen the Errol Flynn Robin Hood movie? And if you did, probably not on theatrical release because that was in like the late 30s, early 40s or whatever it was. You may have seen it back when public libraries used to do movie night on Wednesdays during the summer, right? Out on the lawn outside, they'd project it onto the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, look, a chart because we need archers. We need an archer chart. I do like this, the target type or size, broad side of a barn. What about the male side of the barn? Does it have to be the broad side, or can we shoot at the male side?
I think so.
Yeah. And is there really that much of a target difference between a storm giant, a cloud giant, and a frost giant?
I'm saying no. There certainly wouldn't be in my games.
I get there's all kinds of number crunching that people want to do here because we just can't help ourselves, right? We've got to crunch all them their numbers. But how different are these things really? I get that there is a difference between the storm giant, cloud giant, frost giant level stuff and the ogre mage, djinn, hill giant down to the man or orc and down to the pixie level. But I mean, couldn't we have collapsed this table into about maybe 6 categories of target size at the most?
The answer to that question is yes.
Yeah.
If you were wondering.
The Dragon Dungeon Design Kit. Hey, we're only an hour into this, and we're just now getting into kind of the meat of this whole thing, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, well.
After opening the door, you look upon a 50 by 75 foot room. So it's a banquet hall.
Yes.
So what does it look like? What do you mean look like? You're in a dungeon, dummy. What do you think it looks like? A department store? It looks like a banquet hall.
It's, Will Wheaton, who is often the butt of a lot of jokes from the nerd, the geek community, has said he never ever wants to play a game where you're drawing him a map or showing him a miniature or building a wall. And I got to say, I'm kind of with him on that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this stuff is best imagined.
I think that's what we did when we were growing up, and I don't want it to sound like, we walked barefoot in the snow uphill both ways to school, but that imagination, I think, has taken a hit to some extent for any variety of reasons. So here's our dungeon design kit. So trying to give you some visuals to help with putting the room together, and I believe, I'm not 100% sure yet, there it is. So there's our graph paper, but there's our dungeon design kit components. So a very early set of visual descriptors so you could lay out what that room looked like without spending a truck ton of money on Dwarven Forge stuff that didn't exist for another 25 years.
Right.
So there's our dungeon design kit, designed to be cut out and manipulated and monkeyed with and messed with, and we threw in some graph paper for you. And now I gotta go figure out what page we were on. Let's go flip back through our. There we go. So yeah, that's that. That was our dungeon design kit, which is kind of cool. Don't jump. We've made fun of this ad before. We'll keep on moving. History of dwarves, with some dwarven legends there. We're gonna bounce past this so that we can keep on going here. Here we go. The simulation corner.
Okay, this is going to get grim very, very shortly.
What's giving you the grimace? The rules are one of the most vital elements of any game, whether board game, abstract strategy game, or involved role-playing design. Whether fantasy, sci-fi, or Napoleonic.
It's interesting that they're asking this question. This is clearly the inaugural issue, or the inaugural episode of this, what is intended to be a running column.
Yeah.
And I'll say it again. We are here in Dragon Magazine in January of 1981, and we are told it is true that reviews are strewn with statements to the effect, where did it go? This simulation corner, I'm on the second paragraph, will be devoted to an examination of the question of bad rules. For simulation games, for war games.
Yep.
In Dragon.
Not only that, but who's our author? Right?
Yeah.
You want to talk about one of the celebrated luminaries of the wargaming world, John Prados is up there.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes, clearly we have not had the full-on hardcore role-playing wargaming schism just yet.
Oh, and we're going to find out just how close those two things are. But he's about to engage in an extensive conversation about the rules of Terrible Swift Sword.
Yes. Yes.
Which means he's about to take on Richard Berg.
Yeah. And why not?
So, there's so many things one can say. For those who don't know, the eternal debate is whether Richard Berg is a genius, a lunatic, a bastard, or some combination thereof. And his rules are always divisive. His designs are divisive. He is divisive. And the fact that it's so old, the fact that we're talking about an article here that is 37 years old, it's amazing. Just amazing.
Si, senor. Here you go.
Don't even start.
The squad leader scenario in a Dragon magazine.
I can't even. I can't. This kind of gives me a little stroke inside. Are you kidding? What happened? When did I lose control? I mean, here in the pages of Dragon, there's some weird I mean, read the scenario. It's March of 45, so it's the very end of the Second World War as the Allies are engaging in mop-up operations against the Reich.
Yeah. What I get a kick out of is, look, the squad leader is played at the squad and fire team level, right? I mean, your leaders are squad leaders and platoon leaders, and in some cases company commanders floating around out there. But we're talking down at a fairly low level. Like the most that you've got on the board at any one time, unless you've got some massive battle royale, is maybe like 2 companies on each side.
Oh, that's a big battle.
It is. And so we have a mixed group of Yugoslavs, Bulgarians, and Russians meeting elements of the German force occupying Austria in a night melee. I want to know what battalion of the Red Army happen to have Yugoslavs, Bulgarians, and Russians all intermingled down at the company level, knowing what Russian doctrine was at the time, in which like the unit of maneuver is the regiment. I mean, it's damn near Napoleonic in its organization simply because the Russians had so many people to manage moving around the battlefield at any one time. How the hell did you, unless this was an accident, right? Like a bunch of Yugoslavs, Bulgarians, and Russians were all trying to use the same crossroads at the same time when the Germans started shooting at them. There's no way these guys would have all ended up in the same battle.
You've got a 2-board battle. You've got, and then by the way, is there any more classically squad leader line than the last sentence of the aftermath? Because,
minor setback in Austria was of little consequence to the marauding Russian armies.
So to me, this is one of the great existential points about squad leader. It ultimately speaks to the futility of war. We play these war games to feel like we're sweeping through Austria, or we're sweeping into Russia, or we're destroying the Blitz, or we're having this cataclysmic effect upon the conduct of history. Squad leader's about, no.
Yeah.
That's not what happened.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of guys that came barreling into Austria, and a bunch of guys in the German army fought them, and ultimately the Russians got a bloody nose, but it didn't affect the end of the war.
Yeah, because the problem isn't this one fight. The problem is it's this one fight repeated, 200 times in which the Russians get the full complement for every game, and the Germans got to keep playing with the same people that were left from the previous game.
Right. Keep playing this scenario 20 times, and the Germans get no replacements.
Yes. That's what you end up with there.
But folks, just look. Here we have on what page? I'm writing this down. Page 48, a squad leader scenario. And for those completionists, and they exist, people.
Do you have this one?
That are thinking, what do you mean I don't have every... And the other thing is, it's number 6.
Yeah. Yeah, there used to be regular squad leader scenarios in Dragon. That was a normal thing. That wasn't that unusual.
How freaking great is this?
I will tell you, the next article, the Castles Everywhere, brings to mind the Eddie Izzard stand-up routine from 15 years ago now, when the one he won the Oscar for, which was the one where he's doing the entire thing in drag as a transvestite. When he's talking about, I'm from Europe, where the history comes from. And so, everyone thinks we live in castles. Castle here, castle there, Driving down the street, oh, hell, there's another bloody castle, got to go around. We long for a bungalow. It's... I saw the headline on this one, and I'm immediately thinking Eddie Izzard's fucking castles everywhere.
Yep.
So, but nice artwork of castles. I mean, solidly drawn pieces here. And I can remember seeing some of this artwork because again, this isn't all their artwork. So, I'm pretty sure I've got a copy of this Castles in Britain book that they're talking about here. I'm in the wrong end of my house to go look in the library to know for sure. But yeah, I'm curious out of the bibliography down here how many of these I have. Probably a handful. So look, castles are one of those fantasy tropes that you just have everywhere, and so it's nice when people discuss sort of the historical basis for where it came from. That's always a nice little note.
Absolutely.
All right, there we go. Strategy and fantasy world. All right, we don't specialize in real house-trained dragons, magic swords, or marvelous magic chests. So
Well, that's good to know.
yes. I'm curious if they specialize in real non-house-trained dragons.
There you go.
I'm just wondering. So
I also like the fact that they do that very postmodern dreams.
yes.
What? I'm sorry, what? I just do. All right, never mind.
There are back issues available of Dragon, just in case you were curious. For some reason, issue 40 is the one that sold out.
We should probably do 40 at some point just to find out what that was.
Did we not already do 40? What was the old one that we did? We did an older one somewhere along the way.
I'm telling you, though, 40.
All right. We'll take a look. Our convention schedule, Gen Con South, was in February of 81.
Yeah.
So, of note, OwlCon, right over here, still going on. Not OwlCon 2 is not still going on. That would be one hell of a convention. But OwlCon is still a going concern every year down at Rice. They have this sucker in Houston every year. Still going. We've seen DundraCon show up in these convention listings quite regularly, so I'm betting it's probably still going. And we've talked about Marcon. Again, in 81, they were on Marcon 16. This thing's still going. All right. The Electric Eye, computer, so dice from a calculator. In case you wanted to know how to program your calculator to roll dice. We got to speed ourselves up here slightly, though, because we're only on page 59, and we got 96 to go through.
Actually, it's not so bad because there's a bunch of the dungeon stuff at the back. But
That's true. More detail for bunnies and burrows. Right?
I did not need that in the first place.
As I looked over my copy of Bunnies and Burrows, several questions struck my mind. Many of which were brought on by illustration listings.
For the record, a sentence I've never said.
A sentence I'm wondering if Daniel Maxfield would care to retract. My primary question to Daniel Maxfield, going to the again, is the first paragraph even necessary? As I looked over my copy of Bunnies and Burrows, several questions struck my mind, many of which were brought on by illustration listings and chemical alterations to my brain.
There you have it.
All right. How to have a good time being evil. Mwah, ha, 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 ha. Right? Where'd we go? Some days you come home from work, you're grouchy, you haven't had a good day, you want to be a stinker. You feel rude, crude, and socially unacceptable. That's days that end in Y. Right. Let's play the assassin. Right, let's be the Wild Bunch. Let's be Darth Vader. Because at the time, we didn't know Darth Vader was really a good guy. Being evil and tough seems to have a lot of machismo. So let's be mean to people. So, what do you think? You ever played the evil guys?
Never. It's a personal preference. Always, whenever I'm playing, which is the minority of the time, but when I played, always a paladin.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick a sword in your neck. Believe it.
There's one of these days we'll stumble across it, but there was a fantastic Dragon article from much later in the mid 100s somewhere, I'm sure, talking about a DM who had a whole bunch of people that his players were bugging him to want to play an evil campaign. And so they did a random one-off evil mission where they were a bunch of raiders and marauders. Like, all right, so you're on a hillside sitting on your, astride your war steeds, the bucolic village below, simply waiting to be plundered, and had them go in and attack the village and, maim and maul and mutilate and light things on fire and whatever else. And it was a one-off, and the players all had a good time and everything. They came back for the next week's session, and they're the adventurers returning home to the smoldering ruins of their village. that had been raided the week before by a bunch of ne'er-do-wells.
Oh dear.
So he cast them in the role of the people that were blowing up their own village. And he said, mysteriously, never got asked to play an evil campaign again. So, all right. The play-by-mail game of Command and Adventure Across Stellar Vastness.
Stellar Vastness. That Gorpal ship looks awful Star Trek.
Yeah.
As does that Chumag ship.
Yeah. In fact,
I'm just saying, guys.
I'm just curious if the Lachai chip, whatever, was a forerunner of the Borg before they squared their corners.
Yeah. I don't know, Otto Schmidt II. I think we see you.
Yeah. So, alrighty. You can jump how far? Okay, prove it.
I love this article. This article is kind of great.
Well,
just basically, how far can you jump?
Yeah.
And I'm one of those, as you know, I'm one of those guys who thinks I don't figure it out. But if you're going to stat out something, at least make it be something interesting.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite old features was in the back of Shadis magazine. They used to have the Adventures of Joe Gennaro. Shadis was the mid-'90s magazine by Jolly Blackburn and the guys that are now doing the Dungeon Crawl Classics and in the Aces and Eights game. So Shadis used to have the Adventures of Joe Gennaro, where basically they took about 10 or 12 or 15 different role-playing games and figured out your average so a zero-level commoner that was like straight 9s across the board for his stats, right? Push him off a 20-foot building. What happens?
Right.
And so let's do that in like 10 different games. And like some of them he's just dead. Others he bounces. Like he can catch himself on his way down. It's like it was a marvelous concept. I mean, I really enjoyed the concept. It was okay. So if we're running a 100-yard dash and we're gonna line up your basic zero-level common dude from Dungeons and Dragons, from Shadowrun, from Vampire, from Tunnels and Trolls, from whatever, and let's have them run a 100-yard dash. Who wins?
That's fun.
Oh, it was a riot. It was a riot. Of note, the Blood Tree Rebellion gets reviewed in Dragon.
Yeah.
The brilliance of this, Blood Tree Rebellion's a rich tapestry of guerrilla warfare in the far future. Here's what I will tell you. Blood Tree Rebellion is still spoken of in reverent tones among the professional wargaming community of a way in which you can simulate an insurgency on the tabletop and have it make sense. Never mind the hobbyists get a kick out of it. The professionals come back to this one. Because
it's not well regarded by the board game geek community.
Of course not.
And
doesn't have meeples.
I think it's I think it's misunderstood. I've played it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And it's when I saw this, I thought, gosh, I really think I would like to give this another go.
If you want to earn some street cred at the Connections Conference, make sure to work Blood Tree Rebellion into your presentation somehow.
Ooh, good note.
Yeah. On the off chance you ever end up at the Connections Conference.
Hey.
Grail Quest for Metagaming.
Okay. Now, this is serious, because we've talked about this.
Yes, we have.
And now, you posted, and I was it made me thoughtful. For those who don't know, Steve Jackson has taken back his fantasy trip. After all these years, it belongs to him again.
He managed to get it from the metagaming guys.
Yep. Who knows who they really were, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that he's finally been able to get it back. I played Grail Quest through, I think, 4 times.
Yeah.
It's an era in gaming. I read the review. I think some of the criticisms are legitimate. It's the nature of the fact that, for those who don't know, this came in a little slip-covered, a little, I don't want to say a tuck box.
Little tuck box.
With not a whole lot of stuff, and you read it out of a little booklet, and it's not a book, it's a booklet stapled together. But I would, if you told me, hey, Jim, let's go play Grail Quest, I'd be hell yes.
Yep.
Let's do it again. This was an experiment. It was a great experiment, and the price at $4 freaking bucks for many, many hours of gaming beat the pants off of any other entertainment value you were going to find.
Yep.
Love, love, love.
All right. I do have to call our attention to Titan.
I was wondering, is that the Titan?
That is the Titan. Direct from Gorgon Star Publications at the time.
Yeah, I mean, well, a Gorgon Star original in good condition, $300.
Easy.
Even later Avalon Hill game now in decent condition, a little bit less, but not much less.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is one of the legends of our hobby.
Yep. And one of the most god awful ugly maps ever.
Oh yeah. It's the same point I've made. I love Duel of Ages too. It's an amazing game at so many levels, and grossly underappreciated for the way it evolved the Titan model. But for whatever reason, the cards are gorgeous, oversized, all the gift things, but the maps are just as ugly as the back end of a bus.
Yeah. Yeah, they need some Tim Allen, Rick Barber treatment for sure.
Yes, yes.
All right. The Dragon's Bestiary. We're not going to linger on this too much, right?
I don't think I saw any monsters in here that I was nuts about.
Layout Geek Alert. We still can't coordinate our fontage, right? We're going sans serif over here. We're going to go serif over here. We can't sort this out. Got
Agreed.
the Dust Devil. Who decided that this was the appropriate way to present some text? The first and it's painted.
You gotta believe that it looked good in the photograph, but by the time it showed up in print, it just fell apart.
Yeah.
That they thought they'd nailed this in color, but obviously it was originally in color.
Oh yeah, clearly.
And just nobody was thinking about how this was going to look in black and white.
Yeah. People, don't do this. Just don't do this.
Just never again.
All right, some Dragon Mirth. There you go. Step on his tail again. Trying to cook some steaks. There you go. All right, the Backpack Slinger Slasher. Oh, here we go. Some helpful kitchen tools. The Avenger, the Peaceful Avenger, the Sawed-Off Avenger, the Avenger Jackknife, the Electric Gear-Driven Avenger.
That isn't half bad.
All right. We've got Clarence running around. Yeah, here you go. Because this has never happened in an adventure game.
Right.
The Days of the Dragon Fantasy Art and Trivia Calendar. Because what we need is Dragon Trivia.
Isn't that something?
But you mentioned the fantasy trip, and we've talked about it in previous episodes. Here's how it all fits together. Right? Melee and Wizard are your basic rules, and you've got a variety of micro quests, your advanced rules leading into the big adventure supplement at the end. So
there is a level at which Steve Jackson distilled Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And invented much of what becomes contemporary gaming. I will hold up Advanced Melee, Advanced Wizard, In the Labyrinth, all that, against really anything that's come since.
Yeah.
It is a different approach. It is not a storytelling approach. But it is truly magnificent.
No, what?
I hope that the fact that Steve now owns it means we're going to get to see a Kickstarted edition.
And I would think that the argument to be made here is not that rules light type of role-playing systems like a Savage Worlds kind of thing evolved out of this, but rather that this was the schism out of which Talisman, Hero Quest, Descent, RuneQuest, that those games evolved.
Yes. That is exactly right.
That's where those guys come from. Those guys come from this split, right? The Mage Knight board game is as a result of this split.
No, I think your Descent parallel is the correct one. That I was sitting down playing, before the release of the app, I was playing Imperial Assault with my family. And it's a wonderful game. I have nothing against it. But I said, well, this is a role-playing game.
Yeah.
Just play it on a board.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and that's true of Talisman, of Hero Quest, of RuneQuest, of any of these guys. That's essentially what they are. They're one-shot role-playing games because you don't bring the same character back to the table the next time.
Correct.
I mean, you can play the same dude, but he's back in his unevolved state at the beginning. It's. I remember seeing a blip online, and I was thinking, oh, Jim would have a field day with this guy. Somebody had made a comment. I want to say it might have been over at the Piazza, but it might have been online in the tabletop role-playing group. Somebody essentially asked, why doesn't somebody make like a legacy version of Descent? They made that 40 years ago, dude.
Ooh, Legacy Descent. We called that Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's so great.
But that's what we've come back to.
But look. If you are, pick an age, 1, when Dungeons and Dragons is released, you're now middle-aged.
Yeah. You're now me.
Right. Oh, there's that. And as a consequence, yeah, I imagine there might be something you'll have to rediscover.
Yeah.
For whom this will be new.
Well,
bless you. Welcome.
I'm wondering if that was some 18-year-old that grew up on Euro games and somebody introduced him to Descent, and the only thing he's ever done is board game stuff, and has never. I'm saying it was a dude. It might have been a girl. I don't remember. The only thing they've ever done is tabletop board gaming, and they've seen like Risk Legacy or Pandemic Legacy, but they've never played a role playing game, and we think that's shockingly woeful, but there are plenty of people out there that have never hit an RPG. So,
well, but again, take your point. I mean, if someone were to come up to you and go, wow, I love this Imperial Assault. Well, and what you have to do in Imperial Assault, because we did keep our characters, is you have to take your characters and put them in a little baggie with all the cards they've gotten and all the pieces, so that you remember what their stats are for the next adventure.
Is that a Fantasy Flight one?
Yes.
Yeah, so just to maintain control of a single character, you've got 37 cards and 48 different little bits and pieces that have to sit on those cards.
Correct.
Because Fantasy Flight can't help themselves.
Right. And we took those exact same things and wrote them down on a sheet of paper.
Yeah. Yep.
But because there was no tchotchke associated with them, we said, well, that's somehow deficient.
Yeah.
So no, that is absolutely delightful. Could you please create a legacy version of Descent? Oh my God, that's a new favorite thing with me.
Yeah. All right, and here we go. There's the Dragon Design Kit. So this is the back cover. It's not a misprint. Martian Metals actually did print theirs upside down, and I'm trying to rotate this as best I can through the magics of the digitals here. It's Dragon, it's big, etc., etc. But Martian Metals used to intentionally print their ads upside down, simply to make people pay attention to them.
Yep.
So that was one of their cool things that they did. And the giveaway there, of course, let's flip this back around as it should be, is down here in the very bottom corner. Tell them you saw it in the Dragon, is right side up for the back cover of the magazine. So So there we have it, Dragon 45. A lot to chew on for something that seemed fairly innocuous at the beginning.
No, these old ones. They're good episodes. They're really good episodes. Always a pleasure to visit them.
They're fun. They're entertaining. We've gone on way too long. We've got like 3 people left watching us.
God bless you, 3 of you.
We appreciate all 3 of you. Come see us at Origins. We'll sign your forehead or something.
Absolutely.
All right, let's say goodnight to the audience here.
Good night, audience.
Good night, audience.